Why do we trust people? But after today's video, you might rethink trusting others and start using them instead. If you truly believe people care about you, you might want to skip this video. Before we delve into its dark side, I have divided this entire video into 3 parts so that you can clearly understand how we can master controlling and manipulating our emotions. First, we will explore what this mental trick actually is, how it works, and why it is more powerful than you think. Second, we will descend into its dark side, the part no one talks about, where we will discuss strategy, manipulation, influence, and controlling people. Third, we will learn to master it so that you utilize it for your empowerment, for your safeguarding, and to guarantee that you are the individual orchestrating the actions without becoming ensnared in them. Allow me to introduce you to a cognitive function that a remarkably small number of individuals across the globe genuinely employ. Thinking about the way you think might sound a bit strange, right? Let's understand it in simple terms. Most people are stuck. In level 1 thinking, they have a feeling, they react, they get angry, they shout, they feel nervous, they procrastinate, they feel confident, they speak up. But a mastermind operates on level 2 thinking. They don't just feel, they observe themselves feeling. They don't act directly, they ask questions like, why do I want to do this? Is this feeling helping me or harming me? If I say this to the other person right now, what will happen 3 steps ahead in a hurry? That's the difference between a pawn and a chess player, between a person who is played and one who plays the game themselves. Now, to make it more real, we will divide it into 3 main skills. Emotional intelligence. Before controlling your emotions, it is essential to understand them. Most people live on emotional autopilot. Anger, fear, shame, or frustration arises, and they react immediately. No pause, no thought, just action, which often leads to regret later. However, a metacognitive thinker, someone who thinks about their way of thinking, does something different. They take a step back, they observe the emotion, they don't get lost in it. They don't just ask, what am I feeling? They ask, why am I feeling this way? And most importantly, is what I'm experiencing even a genuine emotion? Now let's delve into this a bit more profoundly. Many individuals claim they're angry, but that's merely a surface level label. It's akin to guessing the location of a fire solely by observing the smoke. Without understanding the underlying cause, a metacognitive mind doesn't halt at this point. It inquires, am I genuinely angry, or am I perhaps embarrassed and protecting my ego? Am I distressed because something unfavorable occurred, or is it because I'm feeling powerless and something else? I'm finding it difficult to control myself. Am I feeling annoyed with this individual, or am I simply tired, hungry, or worried due to some other reason? These questions might appear minor, but this is where genuine self-control truly begins, because as soon as you identify that real emotion, a space forms between your feelings and your reactions. Hidden within that space is power, and then you no longer remain a puppet pulled by the strings of emotions. You become the player who makes moves thoughtfully. By utilizing emotional labeling, you prevent yourself from uttering words that you might later regret. When you identify the genuine emotion, you manage to catch yourself in time. You don't erupt emotionally in front of someone, nor do you raise your voice. Instead, you pause to think, and it becomes more manageable to maintain composure under pressure. The moment you label an emotion, its influence diminishes. Even simply stating, I am feeling quite overwhelmed, can engage the rational part of your brain. It activates the rational part of your brain. You also start to understand what others are feeling inside. When you practice this on yourself, you begin to understand others better as well. A person who appears angry might be acting that way out of fear. Someone who seems distant might be feeling ashamed. This insight is not just a way to connect with people. It also gives you the power to influence others. So, let's do a small exercise. Label in layers. Whenever you experience a strong, profound emotion, take a brief pause and ask yourself 4 insightful questions. What specific emotion am I experiencing at this moment? What exactly triggered this particular emotion? Is it truly the emotion I perceive it to be, or is there another underlying feeling hidden beneath it? What unmet need or deeply held belief is driving this particular feeling? If you practice this daily, even for just a brief 30 seconds, you will be amazed at how much control you gain. Remember, the emotions you do not identify have control over you, and the emotions you acknowledge, they hear you. This is the first step to becoming a mastermind. Your thoughts are not merely background noise. They serve as the blueprints according to which your mind constructs your life. If you fail to pay attention to them, your mind will craft a life that you did not consciously choose for yourself, but rather one that is received from external sources, borrowed from others, or installed from elsewhere. This is why thought tracking, or monitoring your thoughts, is an essential aspect of metacognition. The majority of people do not actively think their thoughts. They simply receive them like notifications in their mind that they never consciously subscribe to. You tell yourself, I'm not good enough, I won't be able to do this task, they probably don't even like me. What's the point of trying? What if I fail? And the most dangerous thing is that they consider these thoughts to be true. They think that if I'm thinking this way, it must be right. But now listen carefully. This is the metacognitive truth. Not every thought is your own. Not every thought is your own. Not every thought is true. And not every thought deserves your attention. Imagine as though you have set up a surveillance camera within your mind. Now, you don't allow any thought to enter just like that, altering the configuration of your mind. You verify the identification of that thought. You must do the same with your emotions. Whenever your emotions are running high, take a moment to pause and ask yourself, what am I thinking at this moment? This is where awareness truly begins, as soon as you illuminate something. When you illuminate it, that's precisely the moment when transformation occurs. Is this thought beneficial to me or detrimental? Even if it appears to be true, does it serve any purpose for me? Is this thought grounded in reality or merely rooted in fear? Then, the thoughts that are rooted in fear become magnified by your mind and are presented repeatedly, dominating you emotionally, whereas fact-based thoughts provide you with an alternative mindset, tranquil and steady. Now, imagine a thought arises in your mind. I'm not competent enough to... The majority of individuals tend to internalize this thought, accepting it as an undeniable truth without recognizing that it's simply a mental reflex, a habitual pattern of the mind. However, a mastermind takes a moment to pause, steps back, and inquires about the origin of this belief. Did someone express this to me during my childhood? Was it ingrained in me due to past failures or the fear of failing? What evidence do I possess that I am incapable of doing this? And here, this seemingly small series of questions transforms into a significant source of power. It breaks the repetitive mental loop, slows the downward spiral, and turns that unproductive thought into a deliberate choice. Now, let's explore why this approach works. When you meticulously track your thoughts, your attention transitions from the brain's limbic system, where emotions predominantly reside, to the prefrontal cortex, the center for rational thinking and decision-making. This transition establishes a gap between you and your thoughts, and within that gap lies your freedom. Now, you're not merely thinking those thoughts, you're actively observing them, and what you contemplate while observing determines what occurs next. Thought diary, a helpful tool. At the conclusion of the day, simply engage in one activity, document a toxic or limiting thought. Analyze the one you identified in yourself today. From where did this thought originate? What evidence substantiates it? What truth opposes it? What new belief am I opting for now? Over time, this practice alters the wiring of your brain. You begin to proceed with a conscious strategy instead of an unknown fear. Now let's discuss the art of strategic observation. Many individuals enter conversations as though they have blindfolds on. They hear the words but fail to comprehend the meaning, reacting solely to the tone. But they can't understand the intention. They see faces, but they can't see the dark side behind the smile. But a metacognitive mind? The mind doesn't just engage in talks, it also observes closely. This is called strategic observation, where you split your awareness into two phases. Phase 1 is being fully immersed in the conversation, talking, listening, and expressing yourself. Phase 2 is quietly observing everything like a social chessboard, and that's where the real game starts. What do you start to notice? First, micro-reactions like a slight glint in the eyes, clenching of the jaw, or subtle movements at the corners of the lips all leak real-time emotions. Second, hesitation, pausing before responding, or changes in the speed of speech. These are signs of internal conflict or deceit. Third, power moves. Who is interrupting, who is mirroring whom, who is moving closer, and who is moving away from. When a reaction to specific words or subjects is unusually swift, it signifies an underlying vulnerability that can either be addressed or taken advantage of. Artificial smiles, compelled laughter, and excessive elaboration are indicators of unease, guilt, or concealed motives. But why is all of this effective? Because your mind possesses an extraordinary capability known as the theory of mind, as psychologists term it, which enables you to simulate what is occurring in others' minds. What might they be contemplating? What emotions are they experiencing? The challenge is that the majority of individuals employ this without conscious awareness. They merely sense that something is amiss, but cannot pinpoint the reason. Nevertheless, once you embrace metacognition, it evolves into an internal mechanism that transforms into a strategic tool for you. You begin to perceive individuals not as they seem, but as they genuinely are. Let's explore this with a practical example. Imagine you are in a meeting presenting an idea and the person across from you laughs excessively at it. Most individuals would either join in the laughter or feel a sense of embarrassment. They will step aside. But what does a strategic observer do? They think this wasn't a joke. It was a display of dominance under the guise of humor, so they don't react emotionally. Instead, they change the course of the game, shift focus, raise their value, and win the game without actually playing it. Up to this point, you've observed how metacognition can render an individual composed, concentrated, and influential. However, what occurs if someone employs it devoid of empathy? When their objective is not to comprehend individuals, but to exploit them, they transform into a mastermind monster. The monster's power resides in emotional analysis as a tool of manipulation, and manipulators utilize metacognition in this manner. Similar to a scientist, they perceive your emotions as instruments, observe your responses, pinpoint your vulnerabilities, and scrutinize your most profound fears. Subsequently, they execute one of three actions. Initially, they exploit you by instilling a sense of worthlessness, compelling you to continuously seek validation from them. For instance, who else could possibly comprehend you? Only I truly understand you. You're so irreparably broken that no one else could ever love you. Where I can control you, it might sound like love, but in reality, it is not. He appears to genuinely care and love, yet in actuality, he is a cage that provokes. He draws out your most profound fears and places them right before you, so that out of sheer fear, you reflect him as he desires. They feign to empathize with you so that you believe this individual comprehends you, but the reality is entirely different. They are merely unlocking your door so they can enter and dominate you. Planting an idea within the mind without explicitly speaking. You might have observed this in political arenas, advertising campaigns, and personal relationships, yet you didn't recognize it because it is crafted in such a manner. A manipulator never directly instructs you to do something. They subtly twist your thinking so that you articulate it yourself. You believe it was your own idea. So ask yourself, am I genuinely thinking, or am I being subtly made to think? There exists a dark side behind this. Let's explore how to safeguard ourselves from these psychological tricks and how to transform them into a positive influence. Where the monster does not seize control of your body, but rather your mind. Thought planting encompasses the gradual sowing of ideas into your consciousness. Manipulators do not exert control over you by directly stating something. They implant an idea through subtle hints, loaded inquiries, and repetition. For instance, they won't straightforwardly say, "You ought to break up with your friend." Instead, they'll remark, "Isn't it fascinating how frequently people remain linked to those who don't genuinely support them? I could never do that, but everyone is different." Now they've planted the seed, and when that thought crosses your mind, so you will end up watering it yourself, believing it was your own original idea. Calculated silence is also a strategic tactic. The most underestimated power of manipulators is their intentional silence. This silence is not serene. It's a presence that makes you feel uneasy, induces guilt, and leaves you bewildered. They might postpone responding to your message just long enough to make you feel anxious. They will gaze at you without uttering a word, and you will eventually find yourself talking more, speaking at a slower pace, taking extended pauses, which ultimately leads you to reveal everything yourself. You shared something personal, and they just remain silent, watching you. Now you start to ramble, backtrack, and apologize. The power is now in their hands. You've opened up and they haven't said a word yet. Sometimes the most powerful move is to say nothing. And now we move on to the monster's next move. Are driven to prove to them that you have a distinctive comprehension. You experience the urge to display that you are unlike the others. This is the point where they seize control over you, manipulating your emotions for their benefit. By portraying themselves as vulnerable, they lure you in, making you feel accountable for their well-being. They exploit your empathy, transforming it into an instrument for their manipulation. This illusion of innocence is their most dangerous tactic, as it disarms you, rendering you more susceptible to their influence. However, this is ultimately a deceptive trap. They are meticulously collecting emotional intelligence from you. Slowly, they are putting me in emotional depth. And then one day, you hurt me, even though I shared everything with you. Now you have become the villain, and they are still pulling the strings? When you start observing yourself from the outside, your prefrontal cortex becomes active. This means your thinking and decision-making brain stops you from reacting and puts you into a strategy with practical techniques. When you are confused or emotional, ask your mind, what is it feeling right now? Why is it reacting this way? What does it truly need in this moment? Yes. Talk to yourself in the third person. For example, am I scared about this presentation, or is he nervous about this presentation? Why? Does he trust his preparation? Is he trusting his prep or just seeking validation? This small shift makes a big difference. You step back from your thoughts and move into a position of power. There is absolutely no necessity to transform into a monk or a scientist. Merely maintaining daily awareness, consistent reputation, and utilizing a few strategic tools will enable you to become a mastermind that no one can manipulate. Once you attain this level, you begin to think like Johan Libert. You might have observed someone persistently seeking approval, but you do not react to it. Instead, you reflect confidence, offer small validations, and progressively start guiding the group dynamics. But why does this happen? Because now you possess the ability to see behind the game. You can take a few steps. You need to pause and observe what's happening inside. On the second level, am I really angry or am I insecure? The third question is this a belief from my childhood or did someone make me think this way? Choose not to react. Now I'm not moving the pieces. I'm looking at the board that created the game. Reflect on who tried to push my buttons today and how I remained calm. When you follow all these steps, the result will be beneficial for you. You'll feel deep mental peace, and your emotions will be firmly in check. You'll become a strategically strong person, immune to prediction or provocation by anyone. Now, no one can play games with you. The rules and the game itself will be fully under your control.